Hi loving soul, it's Remy here. Do you feel like you keep attracting the same toxic partners who are emotionally unavailable and just somehow seem to make you morph into an overgiving people pleaser in every relationship? Well, this episode is to show you the reason you are attracted to the same type of partners over and over again, even if the relationships don't make you feel good and aren't serving your highest and best vision for yourself. I know you're hating on yourself for it, but listen, believe it or not, like everything that is keeping you stuck, it's just a learned way of being that you taught yourself as a child to keep you safe. And over the years, you've held on to it so tightly that it has formed a part of your belief system. But don't worry, just like a cocoon around a butterfly, when you were young and vulnerable, you needed that safety, but now you're ready to spread your wings. And the cocoon feels more of an uncomfortable trap. But just like a butterfly, you have the resources to break free and embrace the life and love that's waiting for you. If you feel stuck in a cycle of relationships that suck you dry, bruise your heart and damage your self-esteem, well, this could be your key to the conscious awareness you need to start having greater control over who you're attracted to and who you are attracting into your life. So let's get stuck in. Not sure where to even begin when it comes to finding a healthy, loving partner? Maybe a part of you thinks it's easier to just be single and avoid the anxiety and stress of a relationship altogether, but yet another part still dreams of having a gorgeous partner to dance through life with. If you want to attract a loving partner who is aligned with the best version of you and have the confidence to be that best version of you, then the universe has brought us together here now for a reason. Let's unlock your power to attract everything you truly deserve. Hi, I'm Remy, clinical hypnotherapist, NLP practitioner, EFT facilitator, certified life and success coach, and your dedicated love upgrade coach. I went from being a people-pleasing, codependent, anxious serial dater and marrier of the wrong men to being happily married with the warm, loving family and life I always dreamed of. It wasn't luck that got me here though. It was doing important internal work, and I'm here now to share everything I know with you so you can get what you want most too. It's time to update your entire mind, plug in and switch on your spiritual connection and start some real life magic happening. This is your time to put beautiful you first for a change. The outside world can wait, so hush those notifications and let's get down to some important work. Just now I was on my way back from the gym and I saw a lady wearing the funniest t-shirt. It said, "Today I'm only talking to my cat." And it made me laugh so much. And then I thought, oh my God, I really want to just go and give her a hug. But then I thought, hang on a minute, if she actually is in that amazing sense of humour that she feels able to wear that t-shirt, she's probably okay and actually doesn't need a hug. But anyway, it was funny because it's so relevant to this podcast that I'm recording today. And by the way, it was so freaking amazing to get out to the gym. We're in the middle of summer school holidays here in Australia, and oh my goodness, I've had the kids now for 4 weeks off school and it has just been beautiful, but snack plates and play dates and cuddles and kisses and tantrums and all the other things in between. It's been exhausting. So anyway, getting away to the gym for 2 hours was an absolute bliss. Anyway, back to today's episode. I'm noticing a trend with clients that's it's very much in alignment with my own story, and I wanted to talk about it today because it's a very sneaky way that our fearful ego is blocking our ability to attract and enjoy the relationships we really want in our life. And it's a protection mechanism, as most limiting beliefs are, to be honest. And it's a way that our fearful ego, that primal part of us that just wants us to stay alive, it keeps us from getting hurt. But actually, it's ending up hurting us in the long run because it propels us out of alignment and we end up with partners who actually aren't what we want. And the way it does this is by making emotionally unavailable men seem really appealing when actually it's not what we want in our life at all. Now, this is because usually we've had at least one parent who is less emotionally available than we hoped they would be. And as children, we became experts at literally contorting ourselves to be what we think or what we thought we needed to be to maintain a connection with them. Because we are all wired to connect. That is the way that our brains tell us that we stay alive. And it's true, we do need human connection to stay alive. We learn to be good girls. We learn to be people pleasers who are experts at reading the room and morphing into the version of us that we think they want us to be. It's quite incredible the lengths we'll go to ensure that we feel loved by them. We tune down our intelligence. We become overperforming caregivers. We neglect our own needs and wants, all the way down to the way we dress and even the careers we choose. Yes, this people-pleasing sticks with us from childhood all the way up until the age that we start calling it out because we realise it's not serving us anymore, if and when that time comes. And if you're listening to this podcast, guess what, girl? It's come. So you're in a good place. So because this is what we've grown up knowing, this dynamic is familiar to us, this people-pleasing, overgiving version of ourselves. And when something is familiar, this primal part of our limbic brain, our fearful ego, as I like to refer to it, it reads it as safe and it tries to tether us to similar circumstances and acting in the same way and similar behaviours and a similar process of thoughts, because even though that being like that is uncomfortable to us, we are still alive, and it actually proved to be an effective mechanism to keep us literally keep our heart beating. Even if we're not thriving and even if we're not happy, it's honestly not interested in that. All this part of us is interested in is our survival. It would rather we forsake thriving. It's not interested in happiness, because the path to these states requires leaping into something much more magical. It requires us to leap into the unknown and really connect with our true self, which doesn't take us down a known path. No, our true self knows that there is just so much potential out there for us. It wants to continually create, and you can't create something that's already been created. That's the nature of creation. So anything that you create always requires a little leap into the void of the unknown, and that's where all the bounty and the treasure lies. Okay, so in truth here we have two unhelpful familiar factors that are working against us here. The first one is the unemotionally available parent or caregiver that we've learned growing up. And the second one is our response to that person and how we have learnt behaviours and the learnt thoughts and the learnt process that we have developed in our minds in order to maintain connection with this emotionally unavailable person. And as I said before, although it's uncomfortable for us, it still is familiar. It's like a default familiar pattern that our brain still wants to latch onto. It really loves the familiar. And that is because our brains are hardwired to seek out the easiest guaranteed path to survival. And by the easiest path, I mean the path that requires the least amount of thinking. Now, this is a fascinating neuroscience fact, but our brains are hardwired to burn the fewest calories possible. Our brain really just wants to operate on a very low maintenance, low calorie burning mode of operation so that it can sustain our life. So the way it does that is by taking the path of least resistance and putting all these things into auto programming so we don't have to think about them that much. And it's tried to literally chunk down all the information we've learned about what's safe in our life to keep us alive. And it uses that on a daily basis until we call it out for the bullshit that it is. It might have served us once upon a time, or it was a learned way of thinking that we developed as a child. And I don't know about you, but I definitely wouldn't, trust a child, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old with making my own life decisions. And what we learned back then served us back then. And in a way, it really worked. And it was genius that we made up this sort of instruction manual for life to keep us safe and connected to our parents. But now it's not serving us anymore. Now it's turning us into people-pleasing, unhappy, soul-sucked, overgivers, right? And we don't want that in our life. I'm going to give you a funny story, well, not a funny story really. It's a story of my life, but it's one of the most poignant lessons really that I think I've learned in my whole entire life. And it was incredible what I had to go through to learn it. And I'm just happy that I get to share it with you now. So maybe you can call it out and realize it in a much easier way than I did, and not have to go through a whole wedding and a divorce to get there. But our brain is literally dictating to us what it finds attractive, and it's programming our reticular activation systems into focusing on more of the same so that we can attract more emotionally unavailable partners into our life, even though that type doesn't necessarily serve you. Somehow you just keep finding that you're drawn to these kind of guys, whether they're like some of my best friends in the past were really attracted to what they described as bad boys, i.e. sort of emotional delinquents, for want of a better word, who really treated them like crap and were kind of miserable drug addicts, really. And why is that? Well, it's to do with their model of the world growing up and what their brain was attracting them to. We totally have got control over who we are attracted to when we get to the bottom of the roots behind why we're attracted to those kind of people. So anyway, what happens when we attract these partners into our life that have these emotionally unavailable or emotionally stunted behaviors that we actually are actively wanting to bring into our life, even if we don't really want them on some primal level, we want them because it feels familiar and safe. And then before we know it, the expertise we developed as a child kicks in, and we are suddenly the version of us that we think they would find lovable, which isn't really us at all. So the whole thing, the whole way we're acting becomes smoke and mirrors to a degree. And of course, in the end, it makes us desperately unhappy and further damages our self-esteem because we know we're not being ourselves, and we never feel authentically loved because we're not being ourselves. So it's not us that's being loved by them. It's a version of us that we think they want. And it's exhausting to live that way because you're basically maintaining a false ego, an alter ego that actually is very out of alignment with yourself. And that always ends in misery. So then we become even more hurt. And so it goes on in an unhappy downward spiral, unless we become consciously aware of the pattern. And then thankfully, we can break it quite easily. We can retrain our mind to seek out partners who are emotionally sound and whole, who have a healthy, stable sense of self and don't need us, but who truly want us just as we are. And they're not afraid of love because they are able to be aware of all the parts of themselves as well, and they're open to being appropriately vulnerable with their emotions once trust has been established. Even though on a logical level we know we actually want to be ourselves and not have to change ourselves to keep someone happy, sometimes we've been hurt, and attracting someone who is as unemotionally available as one of our familiar parents or caregivers growing up was, it's our way of protecting ourselves from being hurt badly again. And so the cycle goes on. And I've seen this play out in my own life. So I'd just broken up with a guy I had been dating in a very passionate but very painful 4-year roller coaster relationship. And I was feeling deeply furious, actually. I was furious at the unfair way it ended, which was actually a blessing in disguise, if I'm being honest now. And I was also furious at myself for allowing myself to waste my time and energy on someone who didn't really want a lasting relationship with me. And I probably was also furious at myself for not picking up on all the red flags, most of which were sprinkled throughout our first date, if I'm being very honest now, which was a hard thing at the time to really take on board. Anyway, the moment we broke up, it was like a fire was sparked in me, and I knew I would never ever allow a man in my life who didn't treat me in the way I knew I deserved. In other words, I had raised my standards of what I was willing to accept in a partner and in how I was being treated. I didn't realize it at the time, but I actually changed my self-concept. That is, I started to think of myself and see myself in a better light. Instead of worrying whether anyone would want to marry me because my parents were divorced and I felt worthless, I saw myself as a high vibe warrior who had survived childhood trauma, had the strength to curb my unwanted habits like smoking cigarettes and smoking weed and God knows what else, and who had overcome bouts of life-altering anxiety. I literally couldn't leave the house for about a year because I was so anxious when I was about 18. That's another story. And I was still fun, still upbeat, still loving, still a great friend, and still someone who anyone would be lucky to marry. I just knew that I had so much to give and that I'd been looking at it completely the wrong way. But I then went ahead and spent the next year attracting very hot and completely wankery men. I had a lot of fun, but I was miles away from meeting anyone who I would consider marriage material. Over dinner with a close girlfriend one day, I opened up to her and myself, really, about how fed up I was with all of it. How every man I had met either wasn't relationship material or they really only wanted one thing from me. It seemed to always go the same way. We had a few fun dates and then the whole thing would fizzle out, or I would have to end it because they wanted more than I wanted. And I realised that they weren't for me. And after a few months of this, I just hit a wall. And I didn't realise how upset I was. But one day, I just couldn't stop crying. My inner wisdom was trying to get my attention. And after a good cry and a moment sitting with myself and doing EFT on why I was feeling so low, I answered my own question. My inner wisdom came forth, and I just remember saying, why don't I believe I'm good enough to be someone's wife? And I was like, what? I thought I'd made up my mind to never think that way again. I am good enough to be someone's wife. I am more than good enough. So what the hell is it? Why am I blocking it? Why am I blocking somebody who I can actually picture a future with? And having said all that, though, I knew that it was truth. I really knew that this question summed up what my problem was. I still didn't believe I was good enough for a long-term relationship. I stuck to the initial chase, the fun, the shallow, easy bit, but I was either attracting men who I knew would never take it further, or guys that I didn't want to take it further with. It was so subtle, but I had set my intention on guys who would never result in a meaningful relationship as a way to protect myself from the fear of failure. How would my self-value and worth survive if I allowed myself to fall for someone I could see a future with, and then they rejected me again? So, my instantaneous healing from my 4-year coming breakup wasn't so instant after all, it turns out. I had been hurt, and this was my way of protecting myself, except by setting my focus on emotionally unavailable men. All it was doing was diminishing my perception of men and love and what was available for me. It took hitting this wall to make me realise what I was doing and that I really wasn't down for meeting anyone like this. So I stepped back and I just focused on my work and my fitness and my nutrition and my friends. And lo and behold, a few weeks later, when I absolutely wasn't looking, I met somebody who I thought was lovely and was the complete polar opposite of my ex-partner. And a year later, ended up marrying them. And about a year after that, ended up separating from them. And then I realised, by golly, by gosh, he was emotionally unavailable too, in a different way. But once again, I had married a version of my father, which absolutely smacked me in the head and made me realise, oh my goodness me, I still have some work to do because I keep attracting the same bloody problem into my life. This time, it was like everything had been bombed down to ground zero. And I admitted I knew absolutely nothing and I was totally spent. I felt so burnt by love and by myself, and I had no idea how to manifest. I thought I'd been doing it all right, and it turns out that I just wasn't. And it was exhausting. It was just absolutely soul destroying. I remember sitting on the edge of my bed in my bedroom all alone after my ex had moved out of our family home. It was a very zero existing family. There was no children involved at that time, but our marital home he'd moved out of. And I remember just flinging my arms up in the air and yelling out, I give up. I give up. Angels, just take it. I fucking give up. Thanks for your help. I'm taking a break. And I just gave it up. And there was nothing but really uncomfortable silence in my life. I just lived through it until the silence felt, honestly, a little bit more like peace. And I was calm enough to listen in. But it took a long time. It took a few days and weeks. I just started to listen into what I wanted. And then I took little baby easy action steps to get it. I stuck around good friends who filled up my energy cup. I did fun exercise. I got into Bikram yoga, which I found fun inexplicably at the time. And I ate well. And I really started to take comfort and enjoy the guidance I got from the universe. These books that just used to find their way into my life. I would walk into the bookstore at lunchtime when I was working in London, and books, I would just say to my angels, thank you for taking me in the direction of the book I need to read. And lo and behold, the book that came into my hands was the one that I needed to read, and all had such powerful messages for me. And I remember being led to the right spiritual guides and healers, which is not something I really dabbled in before, but turns out one of my old best friends was a medium and her mum was a counsellor and a healer. And they, oh my goodness me, did they help me through. It was incredible. They filled up my cup and gave me what I needed, this healing that I had never had before, all relating back to my childhood, this sort of really scary Pandora's box that I just hadn't had the courage to open before. And I just drank it all in. I was just feeling good just as I was. And I just had this feeling of being on a beautiful, magical journey. And I opened my eyes to the magic. I was trusting my instincts and the universe to guide me in line with my highest and best life. I remembered what I was here for love. And I started to soften, and I was intentional about giving love to others who filled me up. I spent precious time with my beloved grandma. I poured love into my precious friendships. I showed up with love at work. I treated exercise like a self-honouring ritual. I allowed myself reflection time and studied things that delighted me and interested me. I played around with interesting business ideas. And I just started to dance through life more lightly. I started to seek out fun and excitement instead of trying to win the approval of others. And it really started to serve me well. I decided to even try some things that I found quite scary, like renting out rooms of my house to sort of perfect strangers who all turned out to be lovely. And I even booked an enormous holiday that was I sort of manifested into my life. I went out into a bar one night after thinking, I just want to go away. I want to get away from London and I just want to spread my wings and experience something completely different. And then I went to a bar and there was a friend of mine there who I hadn't seen in so long. He was actually a friend of my very first boyfriend when I was 13. And he just said, he suddenly yelled out, who wants to come to Thailand with me for a month? And I was like, oh, me. And that was it. A week later, it was all booked. So don't even ask how that was manifested. That was just a gift from the universe. And on that holiday is where I met my current husband, my forever husband. And that was 14 years ago. And somehow all this financial abundance found me, even though I cut down my hours at work to part-time and I started doing more. I was enjoying my life more and I'd never had more money in the bank. It was just so interesting and just such a poignant example of the truth that when we live in abundance and honouring this playful, exciting part of ourselves and trusting that the money will come, that the love will come, that the energy will come. It just does. It just does. And so it is. It's unbelievable. Anyway, thanks to all these wonderful things, I started to see myself in a new light. I was really proud of my life and I was honest about not knowing what the heck I was doing. I was really intentional about finding my joy, even though I was winging it, but I was winging it in alignment. So how did I go from this to manifesting in my husband? Well, I didn't worry about it. I just knew that they were coming and I was just having fun until it happened. I really didn't feel like I needed anyone for the first time in my life, although I knew a loving relationship was on my list of definite wants. I was exploring myself and my potential. And while I didn't get to it all right then, because very soon, as I said, after that, my current husband came into my life, interestingly, he supports me to keep exploring who I am. He really is everything I wanted and more. He's a true resonant match with everything I was at the time. And together over the past 14 years, we've expanded and grown on the same page. And now we're in the throes of balancing parenthood and advancing careers, which is a whole other challenge. But the crux of it is that David came along when I could see what I wanted, and I trusted that it was coming, which required me to have the faith that the right partner would come to me and I wasn't living in a world that needed a safety shield to protect me. I could stay safe by knowing what I deserved, seeing myself as someone worthy of it, and trusting that it was available to me. So I guess to sum up this episode, what I really want to share with you here is that it's so important to trust that the relationship you truly want is available to you and you can be a magnet for it. Number one, you need to know what you deserve. And number two, you need to see yourself as someone worthy of it. And if you can't do that, well, work on building your self-esteem by following your truth, listening into your joys and curiosities, and taking the little easy action steps that are aligned with your actual self. Number three, become aware of the unconscious safety shield keeping you rooted in a reality that just isn't serving you anymore, aka the kinds of partners you are attracted to, and looking deeper at why you find them attractive and whether you need to change your preferences to be more aligned with the partner you truly want. Thanks for putting up with all the screaming children in the background having the time of their life. It is my son and his best friend on a play date, and that was them being quiet, believe it or not. If you know of a friend who you think would benefit from hearing today's episode, why not show them that you're thinking of them? Put a smile on their face and share this episode with them. Who doesn't love someone else thinking about them? I hope this episode brings you closer to the love and life you're meant for. Lots of love to you until next time. You should be so proud of this courageous, incredible journey you are on, and I'm so happy to be here supporting you to say goodbye to toxic relationships and claim the wonderful life and love you truly deserve. If you have a friend who you think needs to hear today's episode too, why not spread the love and share it with them? Sending you so much love in abundance. Until next time.